guys, this is going to be a good one. Stick around till the end. Richie hits us with some really powerful stuff at the very end. All right. And also, I'm doing a book giveaway that I announced during this meeting. If you would like to be considered to receive this book, Anti-Time Management, that Richie wrote, please rate and review the show in your podcast platform, and or share this episode with somebody who you think would benefit from it. And then just send me a quick email at reco12pod@gmail.com. That's RECO12pod@gmail.com. And you'll get entered into that contest. All right, let's get to the show. My name is Justin, and I am a son of God and an addict, and the host of the RECO 12 speaker meeting. And thanks to my God, the steps, and the fellowship of other addicts, I am living the relative happy, joyous, and free life that is promised to those living in recovery, and have been very active in the rooms of recovery since September of 2013. Welcome to the 119th meeting of RECO 12. We are an organization with the mission of learning and sharing the similarities of addiction of all kinds and the similarities of recovery from all afflictions and addictions, and gaining and sharing tools and hope from others who are trudging this road. We are an open meeting for all, no matter your life experiences, faith traditions, nationality, or background. To learn more about RECO 12, please go to www.reco12.com. That's RECO12.com, and learn more there. RECO 12 is a self-supporting service, and we appreciate your help in keeping us working our 12th step in this manner. I'll put the information and links in the chat of the live meeting and in the show notes of the podcast if you wish to contribute to this cause. We received more 5-star reviews in Apple Podcast recently, and here's just one of them. Worth It Daily said, I'm fairly new into recovery. The RECO 12 podcasts have helped me see differently and have encouraged me to continue in recovery. It's so wonderful to hear and learn from those that have gone on before. Some days are tough, and I will turn on an episode for help. And thanks, Worth It Daily, for listening and reviewing. If you, the audience, find value in RECO 12, please consider rating and reviewing in the podcast platform of your choice. Doing this, along with sharing RECO 12 with your recovery networks, is a small but effective way that you can work your 12th step in sharing your experience, strength, and hope with more people. Now, we look forward each week to receiving from the light reflected by our speakers from their higher power. That light inspires hope, meaning, worth, and growth in us, the listening audience. This week, we will step a little bit outside of the normal meeting in that our speaker today does not identify as a recovering addict himself, but he has used many of the principles of 12-step recovery in his personal, family, and professional life to build some projects that have helped many, many people, me being one of them. I first met Richie in about 2009 or 2010 when I was still deep in my own active addiction. I was present when he spoke in a business meeting in Mesa, Arizona. I then hired him as a coach, and he helped me start a little side hustle that is still going today. Also, partially from that interaction, I got the courage and desire to work my own recovery and eventually to start this and other podcasts. Thank you for that, Richie. Now let's hear a little bit more about him. This is his bio from his podcast, actually. Richie Norton is an award-winning author and serial entrepreneur, an executive coach to CEOs. He is featured in Forbes, Bloomberg Businessweek, Inc., Entrepreneur, and Huffington Post. Pacific Business News recognized Richie as one of the top 40 under 40 best and brightest young businessmen in Hawaii. Richie is one of the world's leading thinkers and top 100 coaches as honored by MG 100. He is the CEO and co-founder of PROUDUCT, an Inc. 5000 company, a global entrepreneurship solution helping businesses go from idea to market with full service sourcing, product strategy, and end-to-end supply chain. He is the author of several books, including Anti-Time Management, which we'll be discussing today, The Power of Starting Something Stupid, which is what he discussed when I first met him, and Résumés Are Dead and What to Do About It. Richie was born and raised in San Diego before moving to Brazil, then Hawaii. Richie is happily married to Natalie. They have 4 boys. One son already made his way to heaven, and they have cared for 3 beloved foster children. They live on the North Shore of Oahu, Hawaii, with their little dog, Velzy. Richie, take it away. The floor is yours.
Hey, I'm super excited to be here. Thank you so much. This will be a lot of fun. You know, there's a lot of things happening in the world today that impact us in so many different ways, and we all come from different backgrounds. So I'm excited to share a little more about the future and what we can do to think about where we're going and how to bring that ideal future to the present. We all have different types of values, but what I learned is many people, as I researched this book, Anti-Time Management, many people, regardless of where they're from, regardless of how successful they are or not, they'll look back on their lives and they'll wish they would have lived their values better, differently, or at all. I've met with actual billionaires, many millionaires, people from every walk of life. And what I found is that they will say, I had this dream and I thought that I would need more time, more education, more experience, and more money before I could actually even try to do this thing. Only to find out that when I got there, I still needed more time, more education, more experience, and more money. And I share this up front because I want everyone to kind of realize that we can assign meaning to our hardships, to our tragedies, even to our addictions. You know, my brother-in-law passed away at the age of 21, and I won't get into all of his background and situation, but when he passed, it was totally unexpected. And it changed the way my wife and I mean, everyone who knew him thought about life and time. Because in our own heads, some of us may think we're lucky if we live till the next day. You know, it is what it is. We're lucky if we get to live to be 20 or 30 or 40 or whatever it might be. But traditionally, you know, we're taught that we get to go to school, grow up, get a job, start a family, retire. And then, and then we finally get to live and start doing the things that we want to do. And I realized, you know, that wasn't true for him, you know, and we have 4 sons. Our 4th son got a cough and we took him to the doctors and they said he'd be fine. But over time, it turned out, as we continue to say, you know, there's something wrong here. And they said, there's nothing we can do. We don't see anything, nothing wrong. Well, they didn't test for something that eventually was tested for, something called pertussis, also known as whooping cough. And it turned out to be just too much on his little body. And I remember he just looked like a different person because they puffed him up with all these liquids, you know, they were puffing up, they put all these wires in him and they were, you know, all these medicines. And I remember one night, my wife and I was on one side of his bed, you know, they're in the hospital, tiny little thing. My wife's on the other. And we told ourselves, you know, this could destroy us. This situation could destroy us. And I think statistically it does sometimes, you know, these kinds of tragedies can tear people apart. And we said, you know what? We don't know what the future holds, but we're going to do our best to be better, not bitter. That we're going to do our best, you know, to draw closer to each other because of the situation, to live better because of him, for him, as opposed to letting it tear us apart. Now, that said, there was lots of tears, you know, like lots of bad things happened. But that overall mentality, looking back, seems to be sort of the glue. And I remember they took all these wires and these tubes out of him, and I held him for a moment, handed him to my wife, who was in a rocking chair, and I got on my knees and my hand on his little heart, and she rocked him, and we waited for those last beats. And as we sang lullabies, and when he slipped away again, I just thought, man, life just isn't what I thought it would be. You know, things were going okay until now. And someone asked me, what did you learn from your brother-in-law passing away and from your son passing away? And I said, I don't know. And my wife said, I don't know. What am I supposed to say? Ask me in a year. And, you know, sometimes people will ask us too. I mean, as I'm sharing this, I hope people are self-reflecting on their own situations, but what did you learn? And the answer doesn't have to be immediate. I don't know. What did I learn? But I came up with something that I called Gavin's Law, because my brother-in-law was named Gavin, and my son's name was also, we named him after him, Gavin. Gavin's Law is live to start to live. So I'll tell you this. A lot of people are walking around wondering what they're doing and why they're doing it. But at the same time, there's a little thought in the mind that says, you should try this thing. You should do this thing. You should think about this thing. And somehow, somewhere, wherever this thought comes from, we know it's a quote unquote, what I call stupid idea, because if it wasn't quote unquote stupid, we would have done something about it already. We label it as such because of fear, because of negative pride, because of procrastination, because of a whole list, of things. But whatever it is, whether that thing that's in our head works out or not, is a very important point, but it's also beside the point. Because when you do it, you start to feel alive. And you can learn, and you can move from it, and you can change, and things can happen. It's when we're not in motion that the magic doesn't happen. The magic happens when we're in motion, no matter how small, because one thing leads to another. So when you follow those positive things that can lead us in the right direction, regardless of their outcome, it starts to open up windows in our mind. I had an opportunity to be asked by a guy named Stephen M.R. Covey, who works, with 7 Habits and on trust and on communication and with executives and with families. And I was in my mid-20s, and he said, Richie, I want you to work for me and do these trainings. And he was talking about training old people, relatively old, executives, people that are seasoned, people that have been in this situation for a long time. I'm like thinking, what am I supposed to tell these people, And I literally said, what will the gray hairs think? That's what I said to him. And he kind of pounded his fist on the table in a nice, loving, but like serious way. And he goes, Richie, people say they have 20 years experience, when in reality, they only have 1 year's experience repeated 20 times. And I was like, dang, dang, Covey, that's harsh, And, in a lot of ways, experience is overrated. Creativity is not born necessarily of experience. Creativity can come from it in certain ways, but creativity is a newness. It's an advancement. It's a change. It's a development. It's an evolution. It's a revolution. And that's the way it is in our own lives. We can create, recreate, and whatever our past is, even if it's been repeated 20 times, some newness can come in. It's called continuous learning. That's why I love your show and what you're doing. It's an opportunity to regroup. It's an opportunity to remember where we came from, but it's also an opportunity to remember where we're going, why we're here, what we're doing, to have courage. This is a message about courage, by the way. So at some point, we had an interesting situation. Yeah, I remember our family went from 3 kids, from to 4 kids, then back down to 3 kids. And my wife met this wonderful person, and she needed help babysitting her children. We said, okay. And she didn't come back. Let me just put it that way. She had situations. And so here we were all of a sudden with a 7-year-old girl and 1-year-old twins. 3 kids in addition to our own. And they were with us for about a week. Child Protective Services showed up. I guess they'd been following her. And I guess, I don't know if that was part of her plan or what, but this is the situation we were in, for one day to the next. And these kids are wonderful. And I asked them, CPS, so now what? And no one can take 3 kids. No one can do that. No one wants to take 3 kids. They don't have the room or whatever it is. And I'm like, And she said, where are they going to stay tonight? She said, they're going to probably stay in our office, and we don't know how long that'll be. And I said, well, we'll take them in. And my wife said, we'll take them in the exact same time. And they said, you can't, because you're not foster, certified people. And what can we do? Well, because we put them in your care, we can call it kinship placement. And so we said, Cool. So you can't get paid. Not about money. And so we took care of them for 2 years until the mom got her life together, went back to BioMom, which is a wonderful thing for her. And also, let's be honest, a scary thing in many other ways. And we think about those kids every day. You know what? It's a different pain. When your son and brother-in-law passes away, there's a finality to it. When it's an open-ended situation, you're not sure where someone is or what they're doing. It's a different situation. And it's out of your control. I hope everyone's applying these things as a metaphor for their own lives and the things they're experiencing. My wife had a stroke and lost her memory. He came back. My son was hit by a car. Should be dead. He's okay. And my wife is so strong and so courageous and so brave. And my son, I thought he'd be scared for the rest of his life because this horrible thing happened. And he's not. He's out there riding these big 25, 30-foot waves out here in Hawaii and doing his thing. And I realized he didn't get hit by a car. He feels like he beat the car. You understand? Life will mow us down, and you can say, I got mowed down, or you can say, nope, I'm still here. Try again. No, please don't. Please don't try again. But what I'm trying to say is, regardless of your circumstance, regardless of the things that are happening around you, regardless of the things that are in your control or outside of your control, you can assign meaning to what's happening to you. Because grief is a tunnel, not a cave. And so we look towards things like time management to try and get our lives back. We get to realize when you go back 100, 200 years, you start realizing time management was never designed to give you your freedom. It was designed to control you. It was designed to squeeze every drop of blood, sweat, and tears from workers. It was designed specifically not to control time. So the question isn't, can I control time and my destiny? Can I control my future? Can I control this? It's, if you want those things, it's who or what is in control of my time. And once you discern the difference between having control and what is taking control, you can make better decisions because it changes the decision tree. So someone that says, I want to live a life with these values and one day I will, that's like baking a cake without sugar and expecting it to be sweet. The good news is when you take those values that are most important to you, whatever they might be, love, freedom of time, freedom of location, recovery, life after recovery. Recovery is continuous. But what's the goal of the goal? What's the goal of the habit, the positive habit? Because goals, habits, and strengths are not ends. They're means. They're tools to lead us and get us somewhere else. So when you think from the future, your ideal self, it changes your decision tree on how you're going to get there. There are a lot of ways to do a lot of different things. But when you focus on your values, when I say values, whatever comes in your mind that's most important to you, when you literally put those first, and I say literally, not figuratively, when you put them first, because right now, let's be honest, most people put their work first, leaving the rest of their stuff, the stuff they're actually working for, to chance and on the fringe, and metaphorically, in the cold. And if you want to crowd out your distractions, why not do the things you love most first? Meaning you work from the castle, your dream, and then you build strategic and economic moats to support that dream and your decision making. I am here. I am this person now. I do this thing. Therefore, my choices and behavior create a moat to protect me, as opposed to I am working really hard. I'm stressed out of my mind. I'm going to do a million different things. And one day I'm going to go on that trip to Hawaii, or one day I'm going to have more time with my spouse, or one day I'm going to be able to actually take my children to school and pick them up. When you say that, you decidedly told yourself that's the way it has to be. And you left your ideal living, your values, to chance, to the wind. It doesn't have to be that way. So, a couple things to think about. How you spend your time shows up as how you show your love. And you may say, I'm sacrificing the things I love for success, for my family. But time and values don't work that way. The things you love need to be infused, not just integrated, infused into what you do. And what happens if you're a business person? You start removing bottlenecks. You start becoming hyper productive. You start enjoying your time in life because you're doing the things you like and want to do. The things you like and want to do, not just the things you're good at. And you start finding ways to delegate and to outsource. And you start realizing that you can help people, not just yourself, do the same thing, because you can share ways with them to help them get results, not just focus on the methods, which are very variable. They can change all the time. And you start realizing that there is a hope beyond you and a hope beyond even the ones you love. There's this gigantic hope. When all these terrible things happened to me, I wondered if God loved me anymore. And then I thought, my son's literally sitting in the hospital and I'm like taking a breather and I'm thinking, does God hate me? And then I thought, I tried to get less emotional. And I said, wait, it didn't happen to me. It happened to my son. It didn't happen to me. It happened to my wife. It didn't happen to me. It happened to my foster children. It didn't happen to me. It happened to my other son. It didn't happen to me. It happened to my brother-in-law. And then I started thinking all the terrible things started happening to me too, you know. And I'm like, well, really, really bad things are happening. And your mind starts spiraling. And then I had this thought, you know, I don't think God did this to me or my loved ones on purpose. I think things might just happen. And sometimes people make mistakes. And sometimes there's just choices. And sometimes it's just the environment. Sometimes it's just the fact that the world is the world. And so I thought, if this wasn't like something happening to me on purpose, and they weren't all tied together other than through my own, thinking and my own experience, I thought, love God unconditionally. Because when you love God unconditionally, your faith in whatever is most important, it doesn't go up and down with every loss or win. It's unconditional. Because I think that God, the architect, the higher power, loves us unconditionally. I think the universe loves us unconditionally. And when you love God unconditionally the same way God might love us unconditionally, it actually gives you the power back. Because now you're not blaming daddy in the sky for everything that goes wrong. You're like, the worst things happen. I hate it. It's the worst. What am I going to do now? And it allows you to keep your faith, your hope, your courage, your mind, and be able to start loving others in a way without constantly wondering why everything is so terrible. This is the stuff we live for. No one works for work's sake. The fact that somebody wants to get quote unquote better means they care, means they love. It means there's things that are important to them. And it also means that you can choose to live life and make choices in a way that allow you to work from this ideal self, this dream, crowd out the distractions, and create ways to work and make decisions and choices that support that center. So let me give someone an example here. A guy reached out to me. He's totally a workaholic. And he says, I have to quit my job, but I can't. And I go, well, if you could quit your job, and he goes, well, I'm going to quit my job. I go, okay, cool. And I'm like, you don't need necessarily to quit your job. Like you can work differently. There's different things you can do, He says he's going to start a gym. He's going to start 2 gyms. Then you need to follow this idea for a second. And then once these gyms are profitable, he can finally have time to hang out with his family and get his freedom back. And I'm like, how long is this going to take? He's like 5 years. And I go, who's going to open and close the doors? He said he was. And I said, well, what do you want to do after all this time? I want to take my family to Italy for 2 months and do stuff like that and have all this freedom of time. And I go, how old are your kids, man? He goes 13 and 15. I go, okay, mister. He was an accountant, by the way. I go, let's do the math here. You're telling me that when your kids are 18 and 20, you're going to finally have time for them. And the way you're going to do this is by starting 2 gyms. The reason I share this is because a lot of us are adding in all this extra stuff that we think we need to do before we do the thing that are totally unnecessary. If you know where you want to be, who you want to be, I know I'm oversimplifying, but start there. We've been taught since kindergarten that when you have a goal, they put it at the end of a timeline, and then they'll give you a jelly bean. This is control. This is not how you make dreams happen. Take the jelly bean, man. Get thousands of them. You don't have to eat them. You can just share them, whatever you want. But this is our opportunity. Life is short. Serve others. How do I start? Create an acronym for it. Serve, thank, ask, receive, and trust. START. Serve others. Thank others. Ask others for help. Receive that help from others. Not like a taker, but receive like a giver. And trust others. And I combine that, serve, thank, ask, receive, and trust, with another acronym that I call TIME. Today is my everything. TIME. And every day, now I'm fortunate. I live by the beach, and I see the sunset, but there's sunsets everywhere. And at the end of the day, I look at the sunset and I ask myself how things went. How can it be better tomorrow? What's working, what's not working? But I came up with a little catchphrase that helps me to reset. And it's simple. Every sunset is an opportunity to reset. So no matter how you fared, in the battle today, each night you can reset. This is an important mentality, because the mentality that everything's fixed and I'm going to avoid my trauma for the rest of my life is a different lifestyle than things can improve, I can be better, and I can work from my future, not just endlessly toward it. You have to remember the things that you're doing are hard. And the reason I say that is because, like anything that's worthwhile, hard work can feel good. Just don't forget what you're working for. Goals from experience are tasks. You've done it before. You get to do it again. But goals outside experience are growth. And in growth, it means we don't know how to do it. We've never done it. And that's okay. That's where organizations like this come in, mentors come in, books come in, podcasts come in. Whatever it takes to help you move the needle from where I am to where I want to go, to make it go from taking 10 years to taking 2 years, from 2 years to today. You can focus on whatever you want. But the key here is to stop managing time and start prioritizing attention. Live your values. Stop timing your values. When you sacrifice what you love for success, you get neither. Bring the love back into the stuff you do. Work, home, personal, other people. Play. Every time you say to yourself, I want this thing and one day I'll have it, say, because your brain's like a calculator. If I say, I can't do this, my brain will say, you're right. And so it is. But it's not true. So every time you get stuck, every time you've made maybe a bad decision or a good decision, or every time you're trying to do something new, and I would ask you to ask a better question, and then you'll get a better answer. In fact, try asking yourself an algebraic question. How can I do this thing without this bad thing happening by next Tuesday? Who can do this thing for me without all these things I'm worried about happening by next Wednesday? You might not know the answer, but it does open up a space in your mind for the answer to come. Leadership today is less about data and less about creativity and more about discernment. There's tons of facts and stats out there that people are screwing around with. You can't even tell what a fact is anymore. And what is going on? That is what's going on. That's what's going on. There'd be no such thing called the news if that wasn't the deal, you know, like. So you go, if there's so much craziness in the world and I can be as creative as I want, why not do it in alignment with my goals and my purpose? And then I can discern between what is actually helpful to me and my family or not. Now, there's a million more things I can share, of course, and I will, but I want to leave some time for questions. And I do want to kind of end with this. There are many different ways to do many different things. But I promise you that when you act with courage from a time-centered, value-centered ideal, meaning I can do things that will create more and more of the things that I want to enjoy, they can happen. When you tell yourself, I can't do them until 10 years, 20 years, until this thing happens, you're right. So, a full calendar is an empty life because it's full. And you can't plan for all the things you actually want to do and all the things that are happening. An empty calendar doesn't mean it's actually empty. It just means that things are handled. And that is a different way of thinking. And that's what I hope you got from today, is to have the courage to think differently.
Thank you so much, Richie. I really appreciate that. And that last little bit, I've got I've got a wall of sticky notes in front of me here. And one of them is, the question is not, will my calendar be full, but who and what will fill my calendar? And that's one of the things that I look at.
Oh, I love that.
Okay, what's going to fill my calendar? Love it.
I love that.
All right. So as a heads up to our live and recorded audience, I have acquired an extra copy of Richie's book, Anti-Time Management. Well, I got my background thing. But anyways, and we'll be giving it away to one of our listeners on October 1st of this year. In order to be considered to receive this book, please share this episode of the podcast with a friend who may benefit from it, and or rate and review Rico 12 on your podcast platform. Then send me an email with the subject line Richie and a quick note stating that you've shared or rated and reviewed. And email me at rico12pod, RECO12pod @gmail.com. And I'll randomly select one of you and we'll mail that book out to you then. All right. Now, Richie, one of the quotes from your book that I read very early on and that I've incorporated into my own understanding of the Serenity Prayer, which is a recovery prayer. And one of the lines in that really rings true to this. So I'll read the quote first and then I'll talk to you about that, or I'll ask you about the line and then get your feedback on it. The quote is, accepting that life is insane, that bad things happen to good people, and that you can find the courage to be grateful for the good in every situation and still move forward is hard, even terrifying, but heroic. Now, I relate this line to the Serenity Prayer that says, taking the sinful or insane or unfair or difficult world as it is, not as I would have it. Tell us about your experience with this quote and how you try and live that quote.
When you share my quote about life being insane, but, working through it, is heroic, what comes up for you? I'm just curious.
Yeah. So for me, it's the, the world is the way it is. And I can't change what has happened. I can't change what anybody else does right now. If I can just accept it and live the best that I can within myself and approach it with courage, what we talked about here, and with trust that there's a higher power that knows what's going on and has control, and that I will be taken care of. I'll be granted sufficient for my needs. That gives me peace. So that's what I think about basically when I hear that. Your additional thoughts?
I mean, you're so right. It takes a ton of courage, to do the things, sometimes even just to get out of bed. You know what I mean? It's like life's life. Like things can be crazy. And I think it's just really important to remember, like, just for perspective purposes, ask yourself, who was I like 10 years ago? For better or for worse? That person was a different person. Different goals, different dreams, different situation. For better or for worse. And then you look at yourself today and you go, dang. Things changed a lot, whether I did it on purpose or not. And then you have to remember, when you think of yourself 10 years from now, whether you try to change or improve, or whether you actively try to self-sabotage yourself, 10 years from now, you're going to be a different person. You might as well have the courage to give it a shot. To give your dreams a shot, to give love a shot, to have the courage to try and create space, set boundaries, to have time, to focus on others. Like, there's going to be tons of stuff that are outside of your control. No one would have known that we would have had a pandemic. No one. 5 years ago. I mean, in general, some things going to happen, but no one could have expected everything we just went through. You don't think the next 10 years are going to be wildly unexpected? So when you realize there are things that are outside of your expectations, then you can focus on prioritizing your attention on the things you want and like to do. When you decide who you want to be, it changes the whole decision tree in how you behave.
Like it. Love it. Thank you, Richie. Hey, I want to run through an exercise with you here a little bit, if you don't mind. I'm going to put myself in the shoes of the newcomer, of the person who is really struggling in their addiction and not finding a way out, not seeing the hope, and who has set a goal. I want to get sober. Now, I think, as you mentioned, hey, what is the goal of that goal? So if that is my goal, that may not be the right goal. I want to get sober. So help walk me through to find out, what the right goal is of, I want to stop using, I want to stop drinking, I want to stop eating these foods, I want to stop acting in these unhealthy ways. What is a good way to walk through that goal process of finding the right goal?
That's a great question. Let me make it extremely simple, but also extremely complicated at the same time. Because every person is an individual with individual desires. So if someone says, I want to be sober, one of the questions you could ask yourself would be, what does that look like? And you can ask yourself that question, but you can also say, that's not possible for me. But you know what? That's part of the process. So then you go, okay, what has to happen over the next 2 to 3 years for me to feel like I'm happy and successful with my progress personally, professionally, in my relationships, in the things I like and want to do, my contributions? All of a sudden, you can start thinking and dreaming. You got to just keep telling yourself to stop telling yourself you can't. Just for now, we're dreaming. And you go, well, that would look like me showing up this way for myself. That would look like me showing up this way for my family, my coworkers, my passions. What happens is when someone says they want something, they are unconsciously assigning meaning to that thing. But you need to consciously now assign meaning to that thing. Because when you assign meaning to it, it changes things. It changes the reason you're doing it. Because when you can picture what you're going for, I'm not saying like it automatically happens. I'm saying the motors inside start turning differently. you know, just doing something for the sake of doing something is one thing, but doing something to save someone else is another. And maybe you don't love yourself enough to save yourself, but you might love someone else more. And so you find the things you can latch on to that can help you keep trying every time you fail. But it's that higher picture, that higher order thinking, that higher self, that higher drive. It's that meaning. If anyone here has ever read, which you should read, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, an incredible situation where, he's in these concentration camps and, he's seeing the worst of humanity. It's the worst experience in the world. And he's finding his own way through it and after, through what he calls meaning. So like they say, a powerful meaning can overcome any how. Because I'll tell you this, when you're grasping at straws and things aren't working, oh man, that sucks. But the idea that there might be another way or I can try again changes things. And I can't relate to everyone. I don't think even people can necessarily relate to each other, but we can try, and every time you give yourself a second chance, that's a good thing, man. That's a good thing. Anyways, those kind of questions help.
Thank you for going through and asking some different questions to help put us in a different mindset of seeing things a little bit differently, and breaking that down into a one day at a time thing is really important. I mean, I know that, it's my human nature to procrastinate or avoid those hard things that are so far off in the future until they become an emergency. So that's one of my character defects, is avoidance of not getting at the things that I think are most important, that I think I love most, but I decide, you know what, I can do that tomorrow. I can do that next week. And that, I mean, it's not unique to me. I think it's a human condition for many, many, many people. How do you address that weakness of procrastination, of avoidance, of doing something that you know is right for you, but you just want to put it off?
I mean, let's just think about it. Let's think about it Everyone's so mean to procrastinators, but I've never met someone who isn't a procrastinator. So we're really mean to ourselves. And you got to remember, like, no one is more productive than a procrastinator with an impending deadline. Right? So like having deadlines, having goals, having projects that have a beginning and an end are awesome, because it might mean you might just get it done the night before, but it still gets done. Now you have to remember, people largely don't understand procrastination. Procrastination is actually an addiction to immediacy. I need it now. And they go, wait, that makes no sense because I'm putting it off till later. No, you're doing the things that you can do now because you don't want to do the thing that's going to take longer, or that is harder, or that, requires more brain power. So you put that off and you start substituting high priority tasks for low priority ones that you can do immediately. That is the actual, psychology behind procrastination. It's not putting it off. I mean, let's be real. You've been putting off doing the taxes, so you spend your day doing the dishes, mowing the lawn, doing like 1,000 things you never wanted to do, but oh man, you're gonna do them now. Like you can use that to your advantage. So whenever I think I have a weakness, and I have many of them, we all do, I also try to think, how can I turn this around to a strength? How can I use this thing to my advantage? If I already know I'm going to procrastinate something super important, I know it doesn't work every time, but you can try and trick yourself. What if I just set the deadline there? Move it up 10 days. What if I have an accountability partner? What if I don't get it done by then? I have to pay the opposite political party $1,000. Oh, that'll motivate you, man. You know what I mean? So there's things you can do. Nothing's perfect. We all make mistakes. I get it. But you have to remember, you're going to do something or you're not. And whatever can help you do it better, well, do that.
For people who struggle with addiction, thank you for sharing that, by the way, but for people who struggle with addiction, one of the common characteristics that I've experienced, that I've observed, and that I've heard other people talk about is that, I love my family. I love my wife. I love my whatever it may be more than anything. And yet my actions say something completely different over and over and over again. And that beating my head against the wall of almost, my actions show that I love my addiction. I love my substance. I love this more than I love anything else. Talk me through how, there's the solution is not an easy thing, but talk me through how these concepts that you're talking about may provide tools to help me with that.
Well, what you're saying is so real and so true. And let me just add, not as a scientist, but as a person of my own observations here. Saying you love your family and them acting differently, or you not understanding them, is commonplace. I don't know anyone who doesn't experience that. You throw on addiction and you got, obviously it's gas on the fire. So treating addiction is an actual thing that may or may not be at this point in your control. You need professional help. You need groups. You need these things. It is what it is. Separating the disease from what's happening in the world, you can in your mind start thinking, if I could do this thing, what would I do? What would that look like? And in your mind, if you can, for a second, if possible, separate who I think I am and what I feel like I can't do because of this situation. And what if I was in a different situation? What would I do? Then you can bring the body and the spirit back together. You can bring the head and the body back together. And I'm not even saying this is going to work. I'm just saying as a mental exercise. When you start saying, they call it an alter ego. What if I was this person? What would that person do? Rappers do this all the time. they give themselves new names and they become different people. They do this on purpose. So these aren't necessarily solutions, they're just ideas. But let's get super real for a second. Super real. And I have to say this with caution because I'm not a psychologist or anything like that. But from my own experience and also from my research and working with tons of people. And by the way, I work with tons of people that are addicts or recovering and doing whatever they can. I get it. You know, I don't get it, but I hear the questions. Sometimes you have to stop believing your own thoughts. And when your wife says, this is hard, you're acting this way, sometimes you have to believe that truth, even if your mind tells you that it's not true. Let go of your ego. And then just see what happens. Have you ever tried that? Have you ever tried taking feedback from your kids and your wife and instead of saying, no, I'm not, I didn't do that, and just be like, okay, you watch what happens. Because I'll tell you what happens, because even in my own experience, my own situations, people don't necessarily remember the details of the conversation or who was right or who was wrong. They remember how they felt. And if you try spending a day or a week just being like, no, in your head, no, that's not right. And all those fights we have all the time, and just be like, okay, you tell me all the things that went wrong at the end of that week. And you'll probably find that 50 to 80% of them went away. Try it. Try believing the people that are talking to you. See what happens.
Man, I want to be defensive, though. I want to prove that I'm right. I am right all the time because I know the solution.
I know. Try giving that up for a week and see what happens. If anyone were to say like, the universal addiction to being right, that's it. But you try like letting that go. Oh man, good things happen.
Man. Yeah, I totally get that. And there have been times where I've experimented for a conversation or two, but it's painful to go, maybe I'm not right, or maybe there's something here that I don't need to provide feedback. That's one of my things is I love providing the solution. Hey, totally, this is how you fix that. Let me bust out my screwdriver and my hammer here. Let's get this fixed. So,
and I think just one thought, when I've practiced this, by the way, and when what's weird that happens is you start realizing that most of the crap you're talking about and dealing with literally doesn't matter. And then you look back and go, you know what? They were right. Even if they weren't, didn't matter. And the relationship's more important. Now, this is not an exact science. I'm not talking about abuse. I'm not talking about any of these kinds of things. I'm just saying as an exercise, stop fighting with your people by just keeping your mouth shut and sucking it in. And you'll see that actually you can always come back to it if you need to later. You'll start seeing that a lot of these things you're worried about disappear.
Love it. Love it. So before we close up, Richie, do you have any final words of wisdom for us?
Yes. If you remember anything, of course, remember focus on your values. Find ways to have those infused throughout your life. You start by living them now, not later. But I know what's really going to happen. What's really going to happen is 5 minutes after this talk, you're going to face a challenge and you're going to go about do your day to day. I would only say this: pause, ask a better question, get a better answer. There's a temptation. Pause, ask a better question, get a better answer. Someone says something idiotic to you. Pause, ask a better question, get a better answer. You don't think you can do something. You don't think you can live a dream. Pause, ask a better question, get a better answer. This will change your brain, and that will change the way you behave. That will change the way you show your love, and that will give you your time and your life back.
Love it. Thank you so much. And that pause, ask a better question, get a better answer fits right in with recovery literature. Pause when I'm disturbed, connect with that power greater than mine, and get a better answer. Good stuff. Thank you so much, Richie. This was a great RICO 12 weekly speaker meeting for all addicts and those wanting to learn more about addiction and the recovery therefrom. Please consider joining our private Facebook group. I put the link in the chat and in the show notes, and participate in our community, asking questions and answering others that may come up. If you have not yet rated and reviewed the podcast in Apple Podcasts, please go do so now. Remember to get a copy of Richie's book, Anti-Time Management. Do that and send me an email. I've got that in the chat and in the show notes also. I invite the audience to come back next week when we will be getting back to our typical meeting, and we'll be hearing from Brendan T., Sober and Sexaholics Anonymous since 2008. His topic will be Just Let Go. I've heard him speak in different settings before, and we are in for a treat. Now let's launch off into the rest of our day with a prayer. Richie, would you like to do a prayer from the heart or something like that? Or would you like me to do this?
Oh, I'd be happy to.
Awesome. Have at it.
Our Father in heaven, I am so grateful for the opportunity I've had to share these thoughts and ideas. And we are so grateful to be alive. And we're so grateful to be doing the things that we're doing and to have people and ideas and thoughts, things that we want to live and love for in our lives. Please bless all of us to be more open, more conscious, more able to overcome the things that are hard and to enjoy the things we want to enjoy most in this life, and to help others do the same. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Richie. Keep coming back, everybody. It works when I work it, so work it. You are worth it.
Standing still a moment, carving out this time, reflecting on the landscape of this life of mine. Peaks too high to conquer, streams too wide to cross, troughs too deep to walk through without incurring loss. Yet here I am, still standing tall, despite the rough terrain. One like me survived the storms and walked through wind and rain. Still standing, I will fight the good fight, still searching for glimmers of light, feet still on the ground. I can still be found, standing still.
My wings are torn and tattered, but I know I still can fly. I may not soar unfettered, I may not rise too high.
Recorded in the book of life and bind it with the seal